Welcome, everyone, to another episode or edition of Meet the Experts. I'm Justin Foster, co-founder and CMO of the Fractional XO, joined by our managing partner and co-founder and great friend, Jeremy Ransom,
Good
and Kelly
morning.
Olson, who I'll introduce in a minute. So we do these Meet the Experts because we know lots of cool people that are really smart. And the whole fXO model is that you get an XO, an execution officer, that works with the founder or the CEO to get shit done, to put it bluntly. And so part of that sometimes is there are skills or needs that you have in your organization that are not a full-time job or a part-time job. And the process of vetting contractors and all that is so exhausting and fraught with risk. So we do all that for you. And we're featuring these vetted, curated, amazing people in our Meet the Experts episode. So last month was Alan Prussian on the long shadow of leadership. And today we have Kelly Olson. Kelly is a corporate refugee who left many years in big giant brands doing all kinds of stuff related to customer lifetime value and is now out with her own shingle doing her own thing. And when I met Kelly, I think you introduced us, Jeremy, I was just very impressed because, well, Kelly's a cool person, but this concept of customer lifetime value, as we talked about in the way when we were promoting this episode, is an area that is often either neglected or misunderstood or both by founders in particular. It's often seen as something that's quite common, like in the renewals business, like life insurance or maybe wealth planning or something like that. But customer lifetime value applies to any company that sells to humans. And so the format for Meet the Expert, if you didn't watch the first episode last month, is after I shut up, hand it over to Kelly. Kelly's going to talk for about 10 to 15 minutes without interruptions from us. And then Jeremy and I are going to do a Q&A, and then we'll open it up to any other participants that are listening in for questions for Kelly. So I hand it over to the customer lifetime value marriage counselor, as we used in the promo copy, and new friend and partner in crime, Kelly Olson. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Jeremy, for the opportunity to chat today. I'm KO, like Justin said, and my focus is really on customer growth and retention. And like Justin mentioned, it's something that seems like such an obvious concept, but often founders and CEOs start to focus on new logos and new relationships as they grow. My passion is really supporting founders and CEOs to uncover that hidden potential with your current customers. My focus today is sharing some proven strategies that really look past the honeymoon phase and focus on that long-term relationship success, building customer lifetime value through retention and incremental revenue. So we all know how relationships start, right? They take a lot of time, they take patience, they take money. Acquiring a new customer can cost 5 to 25 times more than retaining an existing one. So my question for you is, what if your next big growth opportunity is simply just sitting right in front of you within your current customers? So let's really focus on what that customer retention and growth mindset needs to be, starting with your customers' outcomes and thinking about how we can implement some scalable processes that help us and our team continue to support your customers' ideal outcomes. So the key here is thinking about how successful companies move from that reactive to proactive post-sales customer management. So as you grow, you're in reactive mode. You're adding team members. You're probably doing some founder-led sales, closing deals on your own. Who are you handing those customers to once you close that deal? Start to think about how you're building out that post-sales function so that you can actually deliver on the promises that you were talking to your prospects about during the sales process, right? So think about how your team is consistently demonstrating customer outcomes to those different segments throughout the customer journey. And to do that, you've really got to think about using playbooks during the customer journey. So let's start with that onboarding phase. Let's think about how customer churn happens during a relationship with your customers. The seeds of customer churn are truly planted very early in a relationship. Research shows that poor onboarding results in about 23% of customer churn across industries. So, by starting to think about how you can curate a customer journey through the lens of your actual customers, you can guide them on how best to work with your company and maximize the value of the product or service that you're offering. So think about how you're sharing the information that prospects share with you in the discovery phase pre-sales, and then take that information and build on it throughout the relationship. You don't need to create a complex journey for your customer, but it does need to be mapped out in key milestones that will matter to them. So start to think about creating playbooks based on those really critical parts of the journey. So I like to start with onboarding to front load that relationship as much as possible. And that helps to anticipate their needs as well. And the focus of that needs to be the customer's ideal outcomes. So, what are the accomplishments and the improvements that are going to deliver value and ROI to keep them coming back? So, this helps you really think about the long-term relationship. So, thinking about how Justin and I spoke a lot about relationships during promoting this episode. Remember not to forget the romance throughout the year with your customer. You can't just come back on your anniversary and ask for a renewal. We've got to think about how we use that journey and how we use playbooks to continue to keep our team focused on the customer's outcomes. The only other part of that I want to cover is we need to also think about personalizing the journeys and the playbooks as much as we can through the post-sales process. This might start very simply with just a couple of segments. Perhaps we carry over segments from the marketing and sales, the pre-sales type process. So think about things like industry, product or service, journey stage, company type. We may want to retain some of those cohorts and then just work as we go through the sales process and think about other ways we can organize our customers, like by ideal outcomes or common traits around current customers. So here's your action. You create lifetime value one choice at a time. We need to predictably deliver value to your customers and ensure they're achieving their outcomes with your product or service. So start this by implementing foundational process like customer segmentation, customer journeys, and playbooks. These are things that you can scale as your company grows. So start simple and think repeatable. Cool? Let's build on the outcomes that we just talked about and talk about a second point here, which is starting to read customer signals. Our goal is to learn how to spot opportunities to strengthen your customer retention strategies. So throughout the journey, your focus is obviously going to be on retention post-sales. You've got to understand your customers. And again, that sounds like another obvious point, right? But we're seeing a big increase in what are called buying committees or buying groups. All of those members have input on purchases and vendor selection. So this is a good point and something to remember, that you're not dating one person when you're going through the sales process and the post-sales process. You're actually in a relationship with the entire buying committee, that whole group. And the latest research I've seen notes that the average size of a buying committee in B2B is 10 members. So your post-sales team really needs to start to understand why the customer bought your product or service in the first place, how your customer makes money, and what outcomes and ROI they must have in order to renew or continue working with you. That's going to give you a really critical starting point to understand when and why customers are likely to leave. So, thinking back to the first point, we've already talked about segmentation playbooks and journeys as a foundation. That's really a way to address any pain points before they escalate. Now we're layering in the concept of this buying committee and thinking about all the stakeholders at your customer's organization. We've got to start to figure out how we can use some data and health scoring to expand those customer relationships in the buying committee. So, how can we start thinking about another aspect of where we get that data? It's likely your CRM. It should really be your single source of truth for your entire go-to-market team, no matter how small marketing, sales, and post-sales teams are. You probably have a lot of data across the organization that will help you understand the health of a customer, identify some risk signals, and start to act proactively before they churn. So let's think about data across the organization, like product usage, engagement, payment history, support tickets, and then go back to your playbooks. Are your customers completing those playbooks along the journey, like implementation or onboarding? So, are you capturing all of the customer team members who are involved with your product or service in your CRM and starting to track who those roles are, what kinds of decision-making power or influence they have? Are there opportunities to build relationships with those folks? I think the main point here is don't count on your main point of contact, who you're primarily dating, right, to stay at the company long term. We've all seen folks moving around more and more frequently these days. You might wake up one morning to an email that half of your customer buying committee was laid off at a customer. So your goal here and your action here is to use your customer data to create opportunities to deepen and expand the relationships that you've got across your customer team. Think about your CRM, start to identify risk signals, and pull data from other parts of your organization. It's a really big missed opportunity when companies wait until customers are about to churn to react. We need to think about how we use our data to build opportunities for retention. And most likely, you have a lot more data than you think. So that's the second point that we really wanted to hit home today. And the final point is really to put it all together, which is beyond retention, how can we upserve our customers to build incremental revenue? And really the way that we're going to do that is by listening to the voice of our customer. So when I think about the relationship analogy, someone asked me once if retention is the goal or is expansion the goal? And I thought about it in the case of a relationship. Do we just want to retain our marriage or our relationship? Is the minimum criteria of retention acceptable in your personal life or in your business life? Or on the other hand, do we want to grow those relationships? So let's build on the foundations we've already talked about: segmentation, journeys, playbooks, data, and health scores, and start to think about how we grow customer lifetime value. It's not only through retention, we've also got to think about expansion. Your current customers are truly your best opportunity for growth, and they're actually giving you lots of signals along the journey about what their future intentions are. So this isn't guessing when we're dating these customers. We actually know, and we can start to look at the data. So we need to think about the customer within both what's happening within their organization and the larger macroeconomic picture, because a lot of companies are struggling right now with high customer acquisition costs, low conversion rates. You as a founder or CEO might be struggling with that same thing. And in that environment where it costs a lot to acquire customers and we have very low conversion, we need to think about how we have these existing customers that already trust us. And we can continue to expand and deepen those relationships into more revenue. So we really need to focus on listening to the customer's voice and what they think about the value that we're providing, the outcomes we're delivering, and making sure that your solutions evolve with their needs. So, where's the feedback loop in that whole conversation? If we're consistently listening to customers, we will spot those opportunities for upselling or cross selling. So, another playbook that you can create along the journey is truly around systematizing the voice of the customer. We really need to think about getting feedback early on in the relationship. I always recommend onboarding or the end of onboarding as a really critical point to understand if we are delivering the value and outcomes and returns that they need to see. And if not, that is the best time to correct that. So we need to think simply about a few questions around outcomes and value, and then some simple data like customer satisfaction or NPS scores to benchmark with some quantifiable data as well. And what you'll find is that voice of the customer then really feeds into the customer advocacy cycle. So the feedback that you're getting will help you build a library of customer quotes, testimonials, and success stories that you share in your larger go-to-market efforts. So customer advocacy to me in the realm of that relationship is really like rediscovering the magic in the relationship. It's that same feeling of when a relationship is new and exciting. We get to hear all of the ways that our product or service has helped the customers. That's great for your go-to-market efforts, but it's really, really valuable also for your internal team. So think about how the voice of the customer can also feed that sort of continuous learning and training and enablement cycle for your product team, the support team, operations, the people team, in recruiting new team members to your team who are really focused on those customer outcomes. So what's your action here on this point? The goal is to regularly get input from your customers to help identify the ones that are ready for expansion. Now, this might be monthly or quarterly or aligned to a different cadence based on your unique customer journey. But what you've got to remember here is that your team needs to also be incentivized for spotting those upsell and expansion opportunities. So think about how you are aligning incentives for your sales team and your post-sales team, so new business and post-sales, so that they can work towards the same kind of goals. We've already got our ideal customers in the door. Now let's listen to them when they're here and identify ways we can help them. So overall, I think that it's pretty clear. Yes, new relationships are exciting, but the real value is in the long haul. We've got to stop only chasing new customers. And if we all work to shift our mindsets, we're going to start to proactively nurture those long-term relationships. We love the new wins, but that short-term focus also needs to think down the road to the land and expand. We've got to foster those deep and meaningful relationships in order to actually have our customers stay on for that long haul. So think about the foundations of the customer journey that we talked about, really doing some smart segmentation, thinking about the key milestones in the journey, creating those scalable playbooks, and then turning to data and health scores to help to inform those expansion opportunity decisions, and then really tying that together with the voice of the customer to spot the growth opportunities. So all of those parts and pieces are working together. And really what I described today is my 5 building blocks that I rely on to increase customer lifetime value. We talked about all 5 components today. And my goal here was to give you a high level, but if you'd like more personalized relationship advice, if you will, on how to rekindle the romance of new customers and put those strategies that we talked about today into action with existing, I'd love to help. So feel free to reach out to me to brainstorm. All right, back to you, Justin.
Awesome. Wow, that was you took a very complex idea and you did a very interesting monologue. That's hard to do.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
yeah, that's awesome. And Jeremy, if you're able to hop back on. So those of you that are listening onto this live, please hold your questions until we're through with this portion of the discussion. I think the first question that comes up for me is when you're working with, let's say you get a founder or CEO, it's like, yes, we need to do this.
Yeah.
What is the um, mindset shift, the collective mindset shift that you see is most essential that they make? You know, because and the context of this is most companies, especially founder-led companies, can be very linear. Can very
Hmm.
to use energy terms can be very in the masculine part of their brain, very linear. Let's go that way. We're driving to Ohio and we're going to get there in 12 hours or whatever. What is the main mindset shift you think the culture needs to make in order to adopt your ideas for customer lifetime value?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that from my perspective, what I see most often is a hesitation to slow down, to speed up. So many growing companies or founder-led companies, particularly when the founder is doing sales as well, founder-led sales, is I don't have time to write all this process down. I don't have time to stop and create a customer journey. I don't have time to get out of reactive mode. And while I understand that, this is a pause that is a huge investment in sustainable growth for the foreseeable future, right? So it's actually getting them out of that short-term thinking and reactive mode and preparing them for the long-term journey. And I think that founders kind of have those aha moments and are most successful when they can see it working, where
Hmm.
clients are or customers are more comfortable sharing what their outcomes and their feedback have been, and then we can be more responsive to their needs. And so it really is that shift of we don't have time, we're busy growing, but then we say, well, this is actually the way to grow. And I think that that's one of the really key shifts that I see most often.
Awesome. Well, Kelly, thank you again for taking the time. It's been super informative and really gave me, and I think gave us all, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I will, I think gave us all a lot to think about. Um, I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago about facing the demons. And it seems
Mm,
like through this process, a lot of C-level execs, founders, would be forced with facing the demons of their own business. And so, for example, if they, put those surveys out and, their customers weren't happy or there were things going on that they may not have been aware of, it seems like it takes a lot of um, personal identification, personal acknowledgement of, this isn't this beautiful thing that I thought it was. And that takes courage.
yeah.
So can you discuss that a little bit about that process?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I had this conversation. I think I wrote a LinkedIn post about it last week. So we're on the same wavelength, Jeremy. It's really about there's a fear that if you ask the customer what they think, you might remind them of something that's not working perfectly for
Mhm.
them. You might remind them of all of your shortcomings, right? And
Mhm.
my answer to that is I'd rather know now than 2 weeks before the renewal's coming so
Right.
that I can actually do something about it. So I'm working with a client right now where we're really front loading the relationship in the first 90 days because we know that if we can win through the first 3 months, our engagements are much, much longer.
Mhm.
And we're actually doing a survey right at the end of our onboarding that really hits on what are the measurable outcomes that you've seen. And if there aren't any outcomes at that point, there is a fear, like, oh my God, we don't want to ask them, but we can't not ask them.
Mhm.
If we are going to have a customer churn, it's so much better to know early so that you're not waiting until month 11 in an annual renewal cycle and then they surprised everybody. because we
Right.
just lost 5 or 6 months where we could actually take proactive action and do something about it. And so I think, the concept of having happy customers is those are the customers who are seeing outcomes with your product. And I think that also goes back to more of a product market fit conversation too, right? So it's not just about your go to market motion. The voice of the customer is actually feeding your product development cycle too. If customers aren't seeing value in a feature that the product team thought this is amazing, they need to
Mhm.
know that, because you need to change course. So you're right about facing the demons, but I think facing the demons early and proactively and on your terms is very different than hearing from a customer after your team has spent a year trying to save a bad fit customer and is
Yeah.
frustrated and burned out chasing a customer that never saw the value.
Yeah. Go ahead and stay off camera, Corey, please. So this is more of a comment to react to,
Sure.
but it seems to me that, again, I'm thinking about my 20 some years in business, self-employed, and lots of different, basically every industry sector, all there, been exposed to a lot. And there, I think, has been a mindset that there's always more customers. So that there's always more customers we can get. And and I think there's also a mindset, kind of two things to react to, that customer retention is for like big companies like Verizon or something trying to get
Yeah.
renewals for people's, plans. So what is your reaction to that mindset that there's always more customers, there's always more fish in the sea, or that kind of attitude?
I think the reaction that I have to that, Justin, is at what cost? So can you afford that endless sea of new customers? If you're thinking about customer acquisition cost, CAC, and you're working with your marketing team to make sure that we're minimizing that. I think it's all about cost and balancing resources. So is your board cool with that? Continuously just pulling new customers in and churning them out at the other end. Are your employees satisfied with that? Because what I found in my experience is if there's a mismatch between new logos and onboarding right fit customers, and then the folks on the post sales side who are caring for them and delivering the value, um, it's a very challenging job on that post sales team's part to keep up on that, because we're talking about an endless supply of new customers who are not the right fit, maybe, for your product, and just being on that hamster wheel of continuously trying to deliver the value, but never making any progress. So I think you see that often with, as you're growing, everybody is high-fiving and ringing the gong on Slack, when they're closing new deals. But my first question about that is always, well, how is that lead scored? Is it the right fit within our ideal customer profile? Is that a right fit client that we're going to have an easy time working with and delivering ROI to? Or is the post sales team going to be chasing tail the whole time? Because if you're talking about a leaky bucket situation where the tap is constantly on, filling that bucket with new customers, but we're churning them out the sides, quicker than we can fill that bucket, then we have to look internally and go, one, are they the right fit customers? And two, what are we doing in terms of the product delivering value? Is this the right product? Do we have product market fit? Oh, you're on mute, Justin.
I think I'd learn. That goes to, kind of one of the core premises that I think of what you're saying is that you actually have to care about this. And, and it's like, it's not a secondary thing. It's something to focus on. And I just want to pick up with what you said of just now about that is I see this kind of arrogance, I guess you could say. Maybe it's delusion or arrogance creeping out into other areas. And my specialty is being a fractional CMO, where I see companies that are, we call it fXO, secretly stagnant.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of there's kind of like a laziness to the marketing, or kind of like the check the box, back to the relationship thing.
Right.
Like, okay, it's
You
Valentine's
you
Day.
should want this
Yeah,
product. Yeah.
or the that's all like what I call white people language in their marketing. It's super boring, like written by Hallmark. Like, so if you play off of the relationship thing, it's like, oh, it's Valentine's Day, got to get some flowers. That type of attitude, and it starts to go out as if this idea. And I've said this to many founders: is when it comes to branding, you got to have the same attitude that a divorced dad has when he's getting himself back out there. You got to get your shit together. You got to lose some weight and get some new outfit, get a new outfit, or you're going to be back in the same boat you were before. And it's that understanding that if you're half-assing this view of customer lifetime value, I guarantee you we'll find at least 5 other areas where you're half-assing it in your brand. Guarantee that we'll find it, because it's a mindset thing. So
I think it goes back to, you asked if this was the type of thing that like only big companies worried about, right? Big established companies, enterprise companies. And I would argue it's literally like the easiest cheat code for small growing companies to focus on post sales, right? Number one, making sure you've got the right fit customers to start with. Great, we've talked about that. But really, I'm dealing with founders who are frustrated that it's a hot potato when a customer comes in the door. Nobody knows how to onboard them the same way each time. So there's 100 customers each who have a different expectation of what the company is supposed to be delivering. We might have stagnant growth where, the board or executive team is going, we're closing deals, but we are like literally flat month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year. What's going on? And I think the other big piece is you're seeing that in employees who are frustrated, employee satisfaction that's low, high turnover, because they're frustrated that they're not being given the keys to be successful in those places. And then you're seeing it on the financial side where, the CFO is going like, I don't have any kind of revenue projections for renewals or upsells that are at all dependable. I've got the sales team doing a pipeline forecast every quarter, looking at that weekly, understanding new business that's going to close. What's happening on the retention and expansion side? Why don't we have reliable forecasts here? Why don't we have a process? And often it's taking a lot of the same processes that sales is using and marketing is using and adjusting that to manage someone who then becomes a customer. So then what do we do? How do we apply a lot of those same things? I often hear from other fractional leaders. I work on the go-to-market side of a business, and often I hear from sales leaders, marketing leaders, as well as finance and ops leaders who are seeing a lot of these same signals, high customer acquisition cost, high turnover, high churn, employee turnover, no processes, no predictable forecasting, and they're missing opportunities with people who have already given you their money as a customer, right? You've gone through all of the hard work. So why not just take one more step and build those foundations so that you have the capacity to retain and grow your existing customers? You've already invested so much. Like, this is a very small incremental amount that you're talking about. But I think what those founders start to see is you can actually turn customer success or client success or post sales, depending on how you name it at your company. You can move that from a cost center to a revenue center pretty easily when you start to use this kind of approach and these processes. And what I've talked about today are all very practical things. This is not rocket science coming into play, right? These are things that are employed in other parts of the business. And then we just focus on customers and how we actually implement this with our existing customers.
Yeah. Well, I think it is rocket science in the sense that if you don't understand the science of humans, if you
Great
think
point.
humans are just numbers in a spreadsheet, then yeah, you got to get that right. Jeremy, anything else before we hit pause and go to the green room for the direct Q&A?
No, I think we've covered the bases, and I'm excited to see what the green room might have to say.
Cool. So
Awesome.
for those of you that are watching this video later, the way that Meet the Experts work is if you want access to Kelly to have a conversation, you got to be here live to talk to her in what we're calling the green room. So we're going to hit the pause. Stay tuned for the next episode in November of Meet the Experts. And if you have an expert that you think we should feature, you can just reach out to us at thefractionalxo.com. And please share all of this information, and Kelly's information will be in the show notes. So we'll say goodbye for now.